Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Divulgence. Today we have a very special guest joining me. We have me and my co-host, Bart Sibrel, author, filmmaker, and legendary researcher. How are you, my friend? It's a pleasure to meet you, and thank you so much for your time.
Oh, no problem, Jordan. In Habsburg, is that how you say it?
Yeah,
Habsburg. That's a tough
Hasberg.
one.
Yep. Yep. Thanks
Habsburg.
for joining us, man. Really excited for this one.
Oh, no problem. No problem.
So, for those of those people who aren't aware, I mean, you are very well known, but you have one. I think the one book called Moon Man. Is that correct? And then you have two films.
Well, I recently published another book about potential coming alien deception that von
Oh,
Braun, the rocket
you're right. I'm
designer,
sorry.
warned about. The unique thing about my books, the one about the moon landing fraud and the alien deception, is that they're interactive. As far as I know, they're the first interactive book. So I write a chapter. Then it says go to Sibrel.com to link number one, link number two, and you can see all those free now without getting the book. And so when I say I'm going to talk about, the film Astronauts Gone Wild, so why don't you stop and watch it first? And I'm going to talk about a NASA engineer saying they don't have the technology to leave Earth orbit. So now let me show it to you. So I think the moon book has about 17 links, two of which I added after the publication. And the alien book has like 27 links. And then I recently published the first, as I think we'll see, conspiracy book for children. It's called The Great Earth Hoax, and it's about the moon people faking a trip to Earth under the direction of Dr. Von Wrong. So it's to show for children of awake parents who know they did fake the moon landing. And we'll get into that, but I can't help but say, the poster child of conspiracy theories is, oh, they faked the moon landing in a TV studio. And when you realize they actually did fake it in a TV studio, you're like, wow, what a world that we live in. And so the book is for children to kind of see that and kind of the reverse of it. The moon people in the story, they have four arms instead of two, and four hands instead of two. So their society advanced faster. So they had rockets when we still had wagons, and they couldn't go to Earth either. They couldn't figure out how to do it. And so they faked it. Their politicians faked it. So anyway, but I'm sure we're here probably to talk about Moon Man, about my experiences uncovering the fact that they did fake the moon landing. And what preceded that was my film, A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon, which had about $1 million budget given to me by someone who builds rockets for NASA, who knows the moon missions are fake. And after that film came out, I guess from watching maybe courtroom TV shows as a kid, I thought, well, why not I just track down some of these Apollo astronauts and ask them to swear on the Bible, whether they walked on the moon or not. And that's when the confrontations happened, a punch, a kick, threatened to be shot, threatened to be punched. And then we left accidentally a hot mic in one of the astronauts' home with the door closed, and we got a recording of them talking about calling the CIA to have me killed, which of course wouldn't be necessary if they really went to the moon, and I'm some silly person who thinks it was filmed at Canon Air Force Base. But anyway, that's my introduction.
Wow. So obviously, so much to unpack. I guess maybe the first question that just came to my mind was how, and of course, any questions that you're not comfortable with answering, you just let us know. But how safe do you feel at this point? I mean, your book's been out for a few years now, and I mean, a lot of these events happened a little while back, but obviously you're still a prominent figure. You're still very well known. You're still working, obviously, and doing your thing. So, how does that come into play your feeling of safety and knowing what's going to happen in the future, knowing what's happened in the
Yeah,
past?
well, that's a good question, Jordan. I'm seldom asked that. I was producing the film under the theory it might be true that they faked the moon landing. I had no idea. To tell you the truth, if you want to talk about safety, we can go into, me originally being a pretty heavy fanboy of the moon missions, having a shrine of like 9x12 color prints of Apollo 11 on my wall since I was a kid, and them following me wherever I went, and really being mesmerized by them until I saw someone on TV who worked for NASA who said they couldn't go. So they bluffed, like in poker when you have crap, and pretended to go to get people to back off and to save face because they set a goal they couldn't achieve. And when I became a filmmaker whose job is to make fake scenes look real, I could tell you with 100% certainty that the moon missions are fake. And if you want to bring it up while we're talking about it, and I will answer your question, bring up picture number 2. You can actually prove that they faked the moon landing with one picture. I know that sounds simplistic, but it is. And that's what boggles the mind. People refuse to see the evidence right in front of their eyes. On the left is the way shadows act in natural sunlight. The sun's about 1 million times bigger than the Earth, and it's about 93 million miles away. So it's going to cast shadows in the same direction over the entire Earth or moon, and they'll always be parallel. You can see these are 2 telephone poles about 5 feet across, and you can go out in your front yard or parking lot at work at noon, look at 2 people, 2 trees, 2 telephone poles on a cloudless day. Their shadows will always run parallel. It's impossible, mathematically and scientifically, for shadows to intersect that are lit by the sun. On the right is a picture they claim was the last mission to the moon, where an astronaut shadow is going at 12 o'clock and a rock about 5 feet away is going at 9 o'clock. Now, that's a 90-degree difference from objects 5 feet apart. And take it from a filmmaker whose job is to make fake scenes look real. That is absolutely an electrical light that's really close, which means they're on Earth, which means they didn't go to the moon. So there we go. Our podcast is over, only 5 minutes long. Problem solved. Right, believe it or not, that proves that they didn't go to the moon. You cannot duplicate that picture on the right in sunlight. It can only be duplicated with electrical light, which means it's on Earth, which means they didn't go to the moon. I mean, it really is that simple. It's the fact that it's a positive lie that tricks people into keep wanting to defend that their team won the Super Bowl and refusing to hear that they cheated to do so. So in any case, I was put in touch with a gentleman who said the moon missions were fake through a filmmaking client. And because I had seen that show years earlier and it kind of bugged me, and who was that guy on your show who said we didn't go to the moon? And when he originally asked me, he said, you're a filmmaker, make a movie about it. I studied it for about 6 months and paid myself a salary. And all I did, I looked at that picture, shadows intersecting, and I'm like, that's kind of weird. And then I studied the behavior of the 3 Apollo astronauts, 2 of which never give interviews unless the president of the United States asks them to. It's kind of weird. And then the Soviets had launched the first satellite, the first animal, the first man, the first woman, the first spacewalk, the first crew of 3, the first of 2 spacecrafts at the same time, and spent 100 hours in space for every 20 hours we spent in space, and never attempted to go to the moon. And then you have Nixon, president at the time, not the most reputable guy in the world, who doesn't even show up for the launch, which is kind of weird. He shows up for the second launch after they got away with it. And then you have the administrator of NASA resigning days before the first mission, and all of this other stuff. It made me think there's at least a 1 out of 4 chance that they faked it. And so this is back in like 1988. And if someone came to me, Jordan, and said, you're one of 4 neighbors, and one of the 4 of you is a homicidal maniac, well, it's only a 1 out of 4 chance, and you seem like such a good guy, but 1 out of 4 chance that you're a homicidal maniac is pretty scary if that were the case, right? And 1 out of 4 chance that the greatest event in human history is a complete fabrication, by the intelligence division of the government. That's pretty sobering. So back to answering your fear question. Originally, when I was asked by the NASA employee to expose this, I turned it down. I thought, I kind of have this relentless personality and I love puzzles. And I thought if anyone could figure it out, it would be me. But if they faked it and if I start overturning these rocks, then that might be dangerous because they might not want that. And then I thought, do I really want to risk my life for what Nixon did all those years ago? And I thought, nah, I don't even know the guy. And I want to have a wife and family someday. So I turned it down. 5 years go by. I have another client who's a religious Christian, musician of some notoriety. And they say they'll get a script of mine to a famous Hollywood producer if I read the Bible and give me a 1-year Bible that's divided into 365 calendar day, 15-minute a day reads. And I remember I started reading June 3rd, 1989, the day the man stood in front of the tanks in China. You have one person willing to die for what is right against the Chinese military, literally standing in front of the tank. And when the tank moved to the left, he moved to the left. When it moved to the right, to save his friends behind him. And after reading the Bible 5 times, I certainly wasn't a Christian, if you looked at my life. However, things don't make themselves. A car doesn't make itself. And evolution actually says a lower form of life made a higher form of life, which is the exact opposite of logic. And the Bible says that God puts eternity on the hearts of men, meaning like a judgment to come just kind of intrinsically makes sense. And then the Bible says that you can tell from nature that there's a God, so that men are without excuse for not believing in God. How can a flower and a bee evolve separately and be 100% necessary, for each other's survival? So just because my dog can't understand a car engine doesn't mean it wasn't designed. And just because a human can't understand an eternal being doesn't mean it's not true. So I changed my mind after reading the Bible 5 times. I said, I'm going to die anyway. And if they faked the moon landing, that's more important historically than if they had actually gone. That's what people need to realize. Either they planted a flag, came back on the first attempt, ahead of schedule with 1 millionth computing power of a cell phone, even though they can't do it today with 6 decades better technology, or the most powerful nation on earth falsified mankind's greatest accomplishment and murdered people to keep it a secret. If that's true, and I sadly assure you it is, that's so much more profound. It's like having cancer and not knowing it. So I realized it is a truth worth dying for. I changed my mind. So that was the first time I faced jeopardy. And then, as I said, I was producing the film under the theory it might be true, but I didn't know. But after I made that decision to risk my life on the day the guy risked his life in front of the tanks in China, serendipity would have it, I meet a guy who builds rockets for NASA who gives me $1 million to expose it. And 3.5 years into the 7-year project, we find this footage of them faking part of the moon mission right in front of your eyes. And we might as well bring that up. If you bring up clip 3 and do it as a still image first, I basically said to myself, if they faked the moon landing, they're more likely to have made a mistake the first time they faked it, because they never faked it before, right? So I said to NASA, I'm a documentary filmmaker doing a film about the moon landings, which is true. I wasn't about to tell them, and maybe you faked it and I need some dirt on you, you know what I mean? But then I wouldn't get their cooperation. So I said, I want every photograph, every video image, and every film image from the entire mission. so that I can meticulously go through it and see if there's some sort of error. This particular footage that you're looking at the beginning of the reel, it says do not show to the public. And everything from NASA was pre-edited. This is an unedited reel.
Okay.
And they edited out all the mistakes and they showed the very best of it. Now, this is allegedly the Earth floating in space. Okay. The thing is time-stamped by an atomic clock that says they're 2 days into the flight where they're supposed to be halfway to the moon. And you'll see in the next clip after this one that Neil Armstrong, for the part they wanted to air, he lies and says he is indeed 130,000 miles out. He explains that they only have one window that faces the Earth, and it's filled up with the TV camera, meaning if this is the Earth floating in space and it's being filmed from the spacecraft looking back at the Earth, then the lens would have to be against the window of the spacecraft in order to shoot this. However, the camera's actually at the back of the spacecraft and they've turned out all the lights, all of which they talk about because they thought this would be edited out. This is actually the circular window of the spacecraft, outside of which it's filled with the Earth in low orbit. But with the camera back away from the window and the lights off, it looks like the Earth floating in space. And you'll see it is indeed the window. However, this first clip, what caught my attention is we're going to hear NASA say, you know, the TV picture looks great, at least according to a tracking station. NASA is not even getting live images of this. It's being censored before NASA. But we hear NASA say, we're being told the TV picture looks great. Then there's exactly 4 seconds of dead air. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you hear a third party that's not NASA and not the astronauts say, talk. And then Neil Armstrong speaks. You see, he's still in Earth orbit, which is only 250 miles straight up. So the conversations would be instantaneous, back and forth. How are you? I'm doing fine. How are you? I'm fine also. But they're supposed to be this great distance away. So they calculated a 2-second transmission to them and a 2-second time back. So he had an earpiece in of the CIA counting off 4 seconds, and he was told not to speak until he was prompted to do so. So if you want to, go ahead and play the clip one time, and we might take a look and listen at it a second time.
All right.
Oh, Apollo 11, Houston, Gulf Dawn says that the TV looks great. Over.
Okay, you might play that one more time from the top. So we hear NASA.
Oh, Apollo 11, Houston, Gulf Dawn says that the TV looks great. Over.
Okay, so that's what first caught my eye. He's being prompted to fake a 4-second radio delay, right? Which is kind of odd. And then if you play clip number 4, first you'll hear him lying, saying he's 130,000 miles out. And that's the segment that they actually showed to the public. But after that, we have the unedited version that warns at the beginning, do not show to the public. And you'll see that it's actually the window several feet in front of the camera with all the lights turned off. Go ahead and play it.
Okay.
Roger, Houston, Apollo 11. Calling in from about 130,000 miles out.
They insert a crescent piece of material into the window to make it look like the Terminator line between night and day. And here's Buzz Aldrin breaking down the effect in front of the window. And then they're going to open the iris and turn up the lights. And you'll see that, in fact, it was the window that they've made to look like the Earth floating in space. You see that? Go back halfway into the clip and show it one more time. They claim this is the Earth floating in space. Go ahead, play it.
Okay.
But it's actually the window being made to look like the Earth floating in space. Now, why this is relevant still in answering your question in a lengthy manner. First, I turned down the project for fear it might be true, and if so, dangerous. Then I changed my mind and I said it is worth dying for. If they fake the moon landing, that's an important truth for mankind to know. 3.5 years into the 7-year project, I find this footage, and that was, I think, July 1st, 1999. The shot heard around the world, and I'm like, oh my gosh. It's like, well, that's the window. Let me make sure I get this right. I don't want to jump to conclusions now. They're faking being halfway to the moon. That's for sure. If they're faking being halfway, it means they can't go halfway. They can't leave Earth orbit. They don't have enough fuel. And what we found and published in the book at Sibrel.com, and I read it in audio, Kindle, or print, is that von Braun said the very same thing in his own publications. The largest rocket they can build can only do Earth orbit. And they're faking being halfway to the moon because they can't go halfway, and all the equipment was identical. So if Apollo 11 can't leave Earth orbit, then Apollo 17 can't leave Earth orbit either, and that's why it has shadows intersecting at 90 degrees. So this is what convinced me. They are definitely faking being halfway to the moon. The Washington Post agreed that this proves they did not go to the moon, and he was told if he did a story on it, he would be fired. The 2 NBC news directors, one refused to broadcast it for fear it would cause a civil war. The other one overrode their decision, flew me to New York, put me up in a fancy hotel, and said they're going to break the story nationwide. And then they got a threatening phone call from the federal government threatening to pull their license if they broadcast it. Now, the day I found that footage, back to your endangerment question, I went to church to get advice from the elders. What do? I have proof in my house that they didn't go to the moon with a toddler son and a blind roommate. What am I going to do? What have I done? And they say, drive like a bat out of hell to CNN. So I'm leaving church like the last of 300 people leaving, like at 10 o'clock at night. About, I don't know, a couple hundred yards down the road is a swimming pool for the public that closes at sundown. So it's been closed since about 8 o'clock. And when I leave church going past that business, there's a van backed in, like waiting for me. And as soon as I go past, it pulls out. And I'm like, oh. And this is the night I found the footage. In fact, a part I didn't tell was as soon as I found the footage, I call up my source at NASA and say, you're never going to believe what I found today. We have proof they didn't go to the moon. And that phone call is interrupted with the screech to where I can't even understand what the person's saying. Then, hours later, I'm followed from church. So I stop in the middle of the road. I look at this guy behind me and I'm like, I'm not going anywhere until this guy's in front of me. I got all night. And after a minute or so, he realizes he pulled out too soon. He follows me. So I follow him, know your enemy. He gets on the parkway going to town. I get on the parkway going to town. And I'm like, I want to take a look at this guy. Who is this guy? And I pull up alongside of him and he looks at me and I look at him. This is like going 55 miles an hour. And as soon as I do, he has this look, and as best as I can describe it, it's like a great white shark. You ever see those films where they hang the meat over the side of the boat and the thing leaps out? It doesn't care if that is your child or your grandmother or your wife. It doesn't care. It has no compassion. That's how this guy looked. Never seen it in a human being before. And as soon as we, exchange glances, everything on my car shuts off. The engine, the electrical system, just boom. Someone in the military told me it was an EMP, either from the guy's car or satellite or something. Then I end up being chased on foot with 2 other cars after me as well. I flag down a cab. I go to a safe house where there's a duplicate of the tape. I take it to CNN. I'm literally in the back alley to hand it to a reporter through the back door, and I'm surrounded by government agents who take the tape, illegally arrest me. And if it weren't for a lawyer who had an alley entrance so that he could claim on his business card CNN Center, probably had a closet-sized office, who took out his notepad, and I told him, look, I'm with NBC News. I'm being illegally arrested. I probably wouldn't be here today having this conversation, but eventually I escaped their custody. They gave me some sort of truth serum through contact. They had this like hospital bracelet type of thing they put around me that they referred to as the thing. Where's the thing? Oh, he's got the thing. And as soon as it was against my wrists, I'm like in La La Land, even throwing up. And I escaped their custody. It's all in the book. And when I make my way back to Nashville, I pee in a cup and I say, I got him. I got him. Because I got this, this super truth serum drug. And believe me, I told them everything they wanted to know. And they had a clipboard ready with questions for me, In any case, I give it to a friend to put in a lab in his name, thinking I can outwit the CIA. And a week goes by and I meet with him and I'm like, what are the results of the test? And he says, well, there was a problem at the lab. And I'm like, what problem? And he's like, well, they had a break-in over the weekend. I'm like, well, so what? He says, well, funny thing, the only thing stolen was your urine sample. So the people that run the place are like, we don't know who you are, but please take your business elsewhere. So that was then. And then, there was a time about 10 years after that where somebody from the Kennedy administration got in touch with me who had a document that they gave me where the Kennedy administration was considering, at least not necessarily Kennedy personally, just like Operation Northwoods, his cabinet suggested he kill hundreds of Americans and blame it on Cuba. That's our government, okay? So if they're willing to kill hundreds of their people and blame it on Cuba, I don't think they're going to have a problem faking a TV image of the moon, right? So I got this document from Kennedy's administration talking about possibly having to fake the moon landing, which was much further back in time than I had imagined. I thought maybe Johnson came up with that. But in any case, I had problems then. People following me, leaving things in my car to kind of threaten me, people trying to get the password on my computer in various ways. And then about I don't know, just weeks, I guess, before publishing my book, I got a source who was actually there where they filmed the fake moon landing at Canon Air Force Base. And if you want to have clip number 8 on standby, I already knew they faked the moon landing. I had the footage of them faking it. I had the shadows intersecting at 90 degrees, and you have the logic. I mean, the truth is there without any proof at all, just in the facts of the day. Today, with 6 decades better technology, they're 8 years behind schedule just to look out the window at the moon below. So how could they keep an 8-year goal ahead of schedule with 1/1,000,000th the computing power on the first attempt to go 1,000 times farther than the space station, land a rocket vertically, which Elon Musk blew up 4 rockets trying to land a rocket vertically, and somehow do more back in 1969 than they can today? You can't have greater technology in the past than today. That proves it. And if that's not enough, we have an eyewitness who, as he was dying, fearing the judgment of God, and according to the Bible, if you confess and repent of your sins, you're forgiven. And he said, I killed somebody back in 1968 at Canon Air Force Base. The son, who you're seeing the image of, he called in the military police. And his father wasn't pleased about that. But he said, we need to give the family closure of whoever you killed. So he's there, and he's about to tell not the story of the homicide, but a really short clip about what he eyewitnessed inside the hangar. He was asked, why did you kill this person? And he said, well, we participated in the filming of the fake moon landing. at Canon Air Force Base, June 1st, 2nd, and 3rd of 1968 on a mock lunar set. My friend thought it was morally wrong, and I killed him to keep it a secret. This is the son who was there at his dad's best deathbed testimony, if you want to play it.
This is the story that my dad told me on his deathbed. In Canon Air Force Base in 1968, he said by the time he got there, that there was already 2 large hangars that were connected to make it look like a lunar landscape. Inside the staging area, the lunar lander, all of the walls were painted flat black. When Dad saw the moon landing on TV, he cried. He said he knew that what he had witnessed on TV was exactly what they recorded in that hangar.
So a few days after I got this information, the gentleman there, the son of the eyewitness to the moon landing fraud, was visited by 2 CIA agents who threatened to kill him and his family if he ever spoke to me again. That was in 2021. And the White House press secretary investigated this. The United States Senate Intelligence Committee investigated this, as did the FBI, to give that man who you just saw whistleblower protection, which is a strange thing to do if they really went to the moon. So that's, as of 5 years ago, people are being threatened with death if they expose the moon landing fraud. And then lastly, if you don't mind, show image 12 and have image 11 on standby. Part of what's in the book, Moon Man, at Sibrel.com, that's not in my movie, are testimonies of people who we knew at the time the film was released, but asked that information not be released until after their death. This is the woman who was married to the man who was going to be the first man to walk on the moon. And if you want to bring up the next image or the previous image, image 11, these are the 3 astronauts in Apollo 1 who were going to be the first men on the moon mission. Her husband, Virgil Grissom, is the gentleman on the left there. If you want to go back to showing Betty again, I interviewed her for 4 hours. And she told me that her husband was a whistleblower in the Apollo program, that he had given members of Congress and the Senate documentation as to how the Apollo program was at least 10 years behind schedule. Remember, they're 8 years behind schedule today with 60 years better technology, 8 years behind schedule, just to look at the window at the moon below. Okay? When they allegedly went on the first attempt with 1 million computing power cell phone. So her husband, Virgil Grissom, was frustrated that they wouldn't fix anything at NASA because the higher-ups knew they were going to fake it, but hadn't yet informed the astronauts as of January of 1967. In his anger, without permission, he took a bunch of reporters to the very top of the moon rocket and affixed a lemon the size of a grapefruit, which he said he picked from his own backyard that morning. A lemon, as you know, is calling something a piece of junk. So the generals at the Pentagon turned on their TV that evening and saw the man who was going to be the first man to walk on the moon call the moon rocket a lemon on national TV. Generals at the Pentagon personally threatened to kill him or have him killed, to where he was immediately put under Secret Service protection. Betty Grissom, I had a 4-hour interview with her. She told me on January 26, 1967, her husband, Virgil Grissom, telephoned from NASA and said, "Hon, for some strange reason, the CIA is all over the launch pad today inspecting the equipment." He says, "I've been here for 8 years, never seen the CIA a single time. Why did they show up today?" The very next day, he's dead from faulty equipment. She says he was killed by the CIA, not me. Her son says the same thing, who's a 747 pilot. So there is danger involved in this. And then the person who investigated her husband's murder was killed during the investigation. So we have Cyrus Eugene Akers killing somebody. We have the Apollo 1 crew being killed. That's 4 people. We have the investigator of the homicide being killed. That's 5 people. And we have 4 backup crews of Apollo astronauts being killed as well. That's 9 people so far that we know of. And of course, the son of the man who eyewitnessed it, he was threatened with death. I wasn't personally threatened with death, but faced difficult circumstances. And if that lawyer hadn't popped out in the alley behind CNN, I probably wouldn't be here today. So took 45 minutes to answer your question. How's my level of jeopardy? But we covered a lot of territory. And how is it today? As you know, if you read the book, during these adventures, 2 good guys in the government showed up who, as best as I can tell, worked for the Marines Intelligence Division. I think it's called the MCIA, Marine Corps Intelligence Activity Department, as best as I can tell. One of them had on a watch that said United States Marine Corps. And I got people like them looking after me. I have divine intervention above that. And as I'm the most recognizable person about this topic, if something happened to me, that would probably add fuel to the fire. So hopefully that's, working on my behalf. And the tradition among the CIA, whoever, they generally don't go after the person receiving the information. They go after the person who gave it. And that's why they threatened the son with death for talking to me, but never personally threatened me with death.
Gotcha. Go ahead. Go ahead, Osbert.
Well, I was just curious, and I know we're limited on time and stuff, so I'm just curious why you think they're trying to revisit this, the moon now in 2026. Like, what is it that's that is happening, that's making this like an imminent thing that they need to try to like do this again? What do you think is like happening with Artemis? I mean, is it all AI? I mean, I'm just curious, because it just seems like there's so many weird things that are happening now, and what you think maybe the significance of like this revisiting the moon is, in this time.
Well, it's a good question, Hasberg. I would say, let's say, for example, they've already been to the South Pole 9 times. Okay. They visited, come back 9 times so far to the South Pole. On the 10th time, do you think there would be such a big media circus to go the 10th time? I mean, no one would care, right? After they went to the moon the 2nd time, people were complaining that reruns of I Love Lucy were being interrupted, right? So I don't think going to the South Pole on the 10th time would be that big of a deal.
Right.
Have we forgotten? They've already claimed they've left Earth orbit 9 times, which of course they lied about. So why would leaving Earth orbit the 10th time be that big of a deal? When I did my first big interview, I think that my film came out in 2001. And I did Coast to Coast. And after that interview, the film outsold Gladiator, which was an Academy Award winning movie that had just been released on DVD. Our film outsold it, at least for one day. And I got 2,000 emails in one day. And back then, and from what I understand about Coast to Coast, it's kind of a rebellious conspiracy theory kind of show, if it was best as I could tell. And yet, of the 2,000 emails that I got, about 90% were, how dare you say the glorious moon landings were fake, from Coast to Coast people. However, about 10 years ago, it's now 95% are, I used to think the moon missions are real. Now I know better. Thank you. I used to ridicule people who said the moon missions were fake. Now I know better. You can't have greater technology in 1969 than you can today, when they're 8 years behind schedule with 6 decades better technology, just to look out the window and at the moon going by. The problem is, when the 50th anniversary happened, which was 7 years ago, okay, people started having an epiphany, a paradigm shift, right? when one was already starting 3 years before that. It reinforced it. Okay, it's 50 years and we still can't go to the moon. Do you realize after they went to the moon in 1969 on the 20th anniversary, with 20 years better technology, President Bush Sr. said on July 20th, 1989, we'll give you 50% more time. Kennedy said 8 years, we'll give you 12 years and 3 decades better technology to put a man on the moon by 2020. They're 26 years behind schedule to do that. Then his son, Bush Jr., said, I think on January 14th, when was it? No, January 14th, 1999, I think, that they'll have men on the moon by 2020, something like that. And that goal is, 20 years or so behind schedule. Then Trump said they'd have them on the moon by 2024. Then they said 2026. Then they said 2028. If you go to clip C or 6C, it says they can't even go in 2028 because they can't make spacesuits that will work on the moon. But they had them allegedly back in 1969. So you have this great contradiction. And if the 50th anniversary really started awakening people, then what are they going to do on the 60th anniversary? They have to leave Earth orbit. They have to. If they can't leave Earth orbit with people, it means they didn't go to the moon, right? So they have to leave Earth orbit, either for real or by faking it. And if you want to play clip 6A, we have a NASA engineer saying that there's this big radiation field between the Earth and the moon that you'd have to go through to go to the moon. And the technology to do so, at least as of 2014, has not been invented yet. Go ahead and play the clip.
My name is Kelly Smith, and I work on navigation and guidance for Orion. As we get further away from Earth, we'll pass through the Van Allen belts, an area of dangerous radiation. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space.
Okay, so they have to overcome the radiation issue before they send people through that region of space, which means, number one, as of 2014, the radiation issue has not been overcome, which means how did they go to the moon in 1969 again without killing anybody? And that you have to overcome it, the radiation problem, in order to go to the moon. So how did Artemis say they overcame the radiation problem? They said they're using their clothing and food between the walls of the spacecraft and them as extra radiation protection. Now, X-ray of your tooth is about 1/5000th as strong as the radiation field. And it lasts for 1/24th of a second instead of 4 hours, 2 hours there and 2 hours back. And the dentist wears a lead vest. So I don't think clothing and food is going to help that much. As naive as it sounds, I gave them the benefit of the doubt. I assumed, well, maybe they're really going to try to leave Earth orbit this time. But it looks like, having launched on April Fool's Day, which is only a 1 out of 365 chance, and I don't know much about the Illuminati and all that junk, but they do exist. And, all these numbers and 13 and 322 and April Fool's Day mean something to them. And they named the spacecraft Integrity. You're supposed to believe them because of that. And then I'm like, okay, we're seeing still images. The only image we have of the Earthrise until 3 days ago, okay, which is like 3 weeks after the event, is this still image, which is being repeated, over and over again at every media outlet. And someone processed it through the AI and it said it was fake. 95% certainty it's a fake AI image. You can go to Sibrel.com and read an article about how the smartest AI in the world, not available to the public, said every Apollo picture from the Nixon administration had a fake backdrop, which means it's on Earth, which means they didn't go to the moon. And then they have like an hour-long video of the crew in the spacecraft, but not a single video, not one for $100 billion. I guess we should have paid $102 billion. Not one of the camera going past the crew to the window and having the moon close up and going by slowly. Only because people complained 3 days ago, they released a video allegedly up against the window of the moon going by, but nothing before it and nothing after it. No pulling out to the crew, no going past the crew to the window. They didn't show that. So I hate to say it, it looks like they faked leaving Earth orbit for the 10th time. I mean, they already did it 9 times. So what is it to do it one more time? They have to leave Earth orbit. They have to, either for real or for fake, because if they don't, it means they didn't go to the moon. And that's a great embarrassment. Remember, 2 NBC news directors agreed the footage I uncovered proves they never left Earth orbit and therefore the moon missions are fake. And one of them said we should not broadcast that fact because it will cause a civil war. Well, whoever shot JFK, it's a tragedy. Whoever did 9/11, it's a tragedy. But this is positive. This is burned in people's hearts. They waved their flags. They cried. They prayed for them. They gave them medals of honor for being such good liars. If that comes out, that's going to infuriate the American people, and they will demand a change. So the powers that be are going to do everything within their power to not have the truth come out. And they can launch it on April Fool's Day and somehow think that gives them integrity because we told you so. Whatever. You can't have a government that fakes moon landings with your tax dollars and does more than that. It'd be one thing if they faked it and didn't kill anybody. But according to Betty Grissom, our money paid the salaries of CIA agents who killed her husband, who wanted to tell the truth, that they didn't have the technology yet to go to the moon. They don't have the technology today to go to the moon. Otherwise, Artemis would have landed and walked around. So how can they have the ability to drive cars and play golf on the moon with 1/1,000,000th the computing power of a cell phone on the first attempt ahead of schedule in 1969 when they can't even do that today with 6 decades better technology? The truth is right there. And I've said before, but I've talked to a college professor who's so in love with the moon landings. He says, even if an Apollo astronaut confessed on national TV that the moon missions were fake, I still think he walked on the moon anyway. Wow. People have made a god out of this. And my belief is that they're just going to keep postponing it. It already said in that article you just showed, Jordan, they can't go in 2028. We can't. They're claiming the rocket can, baloney, but now the spacesuits can't. So we're going to have to postpone it again. Well, guess what might happen in 2029, April 13th? An asteroid might be striking off the coast of San Diego. And I assure you, if that happens, no one's going to care who shot JFK or if the moon landings are real or not. So they're just going to postpone it until that happens, and then they won't have to deal with it ever again. However, if there's a God, and I believe there is, and if he answers my prayer, and I hope he will, the truth will come out before then to humble mankind, to show us how far we have fallen. We cannot live in a world that fakes moon landings and has the victims of the crime cheer it and have that type of world and that type of government and expect to prosper and progress. It's a disgrace that they faked the moon landing. We can give amnesty to everybody involved who's still alive, give them forgiveness, compliment them for telling the truth about it. But we can't expect to progress as a species or a nation if we fake the moon landing and won't own up to it. like a bunch of kids. It's just juvenile to have faked the moon landing in the first place. But they killed their president. They faked the beginning of the Vietnam War. And they just said, why not? Because they're that arrogant and corrupt. And that's going to be our undoing unless we tell the truth about it.
So, I guess, one of the questions, and, Jordan and I were, kicking, some questions around before the show. And, one of the things that I'm really curious is, like, what NASA operations or missions or achievements do you think, like, actually have existed? Or, I mean, what do you think, like, we're pretty confident, we are confident that the moon landing didn't happen, or none of them happened. But what, if anything that NASA has ever done is legitimate? Do you have a sense of that, or just, even
Well, one of
speculation?
the things I talk about at the beginning of my book is the origin of the word wicked. And wicked comes from candle wick, which I thought was just one strand, but it's actually two woven together. Remember cross your fingers, which is a pagan thing? It's truth and lies woven together. Probably half of what they do is true and half of what they do is fake, which makes it all the more difficult to discern which is which. Just a few years after Apollo, they claimed to have land probes on Mars, and a lot of those pictures match Greenland exactly. So it looks like they faked at least the original probes to Mars. And then let's say they send a probe to Jupiter to measure how much, hydrogen is in the atmosphere. That may be partially true. And that way they can launch it in front of witnesses and actually go to the direction of Jupiter. But it might actually be there to track a life-threatening asteroid or rogue planet. Who knows what? They're not going to tell us the truth about it because they didn't tell us the truth about the moon landing fraud. So I don't know what else to say. And then von Braun, who was the Nazi who faked the moon landing, said that they may even fake an alien invasion in the last days. And that's what my other book is about at my website, Sibrel.com. And it has even twice as many clips about how there are two bloodlines that have been proven to exist, one Luciferian, one, biblical, and that people, world leaders, as bizarre as it sounds. I mean, rape sounds bizarre. Who would do that? Who would molest a child? It sounds too bizarre to be true, but those things happen. And apparently, as bizarre as it sounds, world leaders literally worship the devil. World Economic Forum logo has 666 hidden in plain sight that if we brought it up and showed it, I could show you. And so does Google, and so does CERN. I guess these people literally worship the devil. What can you do? Let them gain the world and lose their soul. And the meek will inherit the earth. They can't outwit God. And they're betting on the wrong horse. So let them have the world. Let them fake the moon landing. And if we repent and stay repentant to our last day, we'll live forever, and they won't. So be it. The Bible says God doesn't even want the wicked to perish, but to come to repentance. And even the person that God seemed to esteem the most, King David, a man after God's own heart, is what God said about him. He was an adulterer who killed the woman's husband to cover it up. And yet he repented. So we're all sinners. It isn't like, these World Economic Forum people are worse than we are, not from God's point of view. We're just repentant, come to our senses, perhaps, and they're not. They are lost sheep without a shepherd. And we don't know how Bill Gates was raised, for example, with racist parents, with a brain disorder. The guy's body language seems to indicate there's something neurologically wrong with the guy. And so, everybody deserves a second chance. And that's maybe the truth coming out about the moon landing fraud will enable that. So we'll see. Prayerfully, the truth will come out. It will humble mankind in America. It will show us how far we have fallen so that we can do something about it before it's too late.
So oh no, go ahead, Jordan. Sorry.
I had a pretty quick question. Do you feel betrayed because you in the sense that you mentioned that you were a fanboy of the space missions before you looked into it, and you kind of had a bit of a internal conflict of whether or not you really wanted to look into it and figure it out. And obviously you did. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you're the first person to ask me that, and the answer is no. No, I do not feel betrayed. I guess it's because of my love of God and love of the Bible, which I've read at least 5 times from cover to cover. You may remember a news story, I don't know, maybe 25 years ago. This woman, mother of 4 children, I believe, loaded up the children into a station wagon and pushed them down a boat ramp and deliberately drowned them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the court in her county wanted to get even. They wanted to execute her, but they couldn't if she was ruled criminally insane. So they debated for a month, 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, 20 days, debated whether or not she was sane or not, so that hopefully they would find her sane so that they could get even and execute her. Oddly, they ruled her sane. Jesus said, you can judge a tree by its fruit. Those who do evil are evil. Those who do good are good. And those who do crazy things are crazy. Of course she's crazy. You know how you know? Because she put her 4 children in a car and pushed them down a boat ramp to drown them. That's proof that she's crazy. They have no compassion. In fact, when the Bible warns about the last days, while some might say, Revelation talks about earthquakes, meteor showers, things like that, I think in the book of Timothy, it says these are the perilous things of the last days. People will be lovers of themselves, boastful, arrogant, proud, disobedient to parents, unloving, and unforgiving. I don't feel cheated or betrayed. I just know I live in a lost and fallen world. I've sinned. And for me to think, that my sin is, different or less of a magnitude than other people is just not true. According to the Bible, we're all lost. Nobody has ever lived a perfect life except the Messiah who painted himself into the picture. And he was killed by his own people. And as he was being killed, he said, God, forgive them because they don't know what they're doing. That's the attitude we need to have toward the people who killed Kennedy, faked the moon landing, 9/11, or whatever. I hate to focus on Bill Gates, but he was a little baby, a pure little infant, clean slate soul. And his parents were racist. And that's how he was brought up. And then if you look at his body language, the way he rocks back and forth and uses his hands like this to talk, there's something neurologically wrong with the guy. And he deserves compassion and conversion. And imagine, how beautiful it is and why one of the scriptures of Jesus says, heaven rejoices more over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous people who enter heaven who don't need to repent. And that's how we give glory to God. And that's the ultimate miracle. It isn't being brought back to life or being crippled and walking or being blind and seeing again, because those people may have gone back to the world. We don't know that they made it into heaven. It's a converted character, someone who changes, who goes from being a worldly person to a godly person. That's the true miracle. And maybe that could happen. We need to forgive people who killed Kennedy, faked the moon landing, and whatever else, give them amnesty for history's sake. And people in the government need to stop being cowards. After 5 people were killed in 1770, just 5, our founding mothers and fathers said, that's it. That's it. We're not going to put up with this anymore. Robert McNamara said they made up the Gulf of Tonkin incident, that Congress passed a law to start a war without reason that killed 58,220 of their own people without reason. 58,220 acknowledged in Wikipedia, and no one does anything about it, and 5 back in 1770 that caused the foundation of our government and the Declaration of Independence, which says when any government becomes destructive of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it. Life. They're murdering their own people, according to Betty Grissom, according to Kennedy's own staff. That's in Wikipedia too. The Northwoods Project to kill Americans. That's attempted murder to plan it, right? Why didn't those people go to jail? So we already have a government, and then the Gulf of Tonkin, and then Kennedy, who his relatives say were killed by the CIA. What more proof do we need? People don't believe in God, a judgment to come, and are cowards. The second to the last chapter, Revelation, lists sins that if we keep doing, we will not enter heaven. Immorality, drunkenness, lying, whatever. But the first one is the cowardly. The cowardly will not enter the kingdom of heaven. Those who know that they faked the moon landing and will not come forward for fear that they'll look bad, fear that they'll lose their job, fear that they'll be killed, may not make it into heaven. So we need to, like in 1770, take a stand for what is right. The best way to reform America is to tell the truth about the moon landing fraud. Then you'll have an historic mandate to reform the federal government.
Really, that's profound. Really appreciate that. And I'm just curious, do you think that, so what you were saying when you played the second video with with the window from the Apollo, do you think that was actually like the spacecraft was in orbit at the time? Do you think that they that they sent actual spacecraft up and then simultaneously were working in a studio, or that there wasn't any like craft that was launched, like were craft launched?
Well, if you were faking something, the way I always say, well, what would I do if I were them? I would do everything is real up to the point where you can't do it anymore. Maybe they could land on the moon, but they couldn't get out of the spacecraft. The spacesuits didn't work. So I would shoot the real landing and fake the walk. Maybe they could orbit to the moon, but not land. And I would shoot real lunar orbit. But they can't even do that. We have them faking being halfway to the moon, which means they can't leave Earth orbit.
Right.
But they were on the spacecraft. They went up in front of witnesses, splashed down in front of witnesses, and had real zero gravity footage of the sandwich floating by. And they are in Earth orbit when they're faking being halfway to the moon. And that's about as far as they could go. Apparently, that's been the limit for 57 years until allegedly Artemis. But the fact that there's no shot video going past them to the window in real time without an edit, showing the moon close up and slowly going by, I don't know why there wouldn't be if they were really there, So it looks like they faked that as well. And like I said, they have to leave Earth orbit. If they can't leave Earth orbit with people, it means they never went to the moon, which means the moon missions are fake, which means their government is terrible, and they're doing whatever they can to postpone that realization until there's some global catastrophe where no one's going to care at that point.
But that there are craft that are going up and remaining in orbit, during the duration of what these missions are supposed to represent.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's one or more space stations. The fact that some of the space station footage might be falsified doesn't mean they can't do it. It could mean that the space station they're claiming to be at is actually a different one. Maybe the original space station they have pushed into outer space to stop an asteroid or something. They just don't want to tell us about it. And that's why some of the space station footage might be false. I don't know. I do know NASA can't be trusted. I do know that at least half of what they do is genuine. But I don't know what the problem is, why they can't just tell the truth. It just shows that our leaders were juvenile. They set a goal they couldn't do, and they didn't have the maturity to admit it. And now we're stuck with these teenagers with nuclear weapons running the world. It's a sad state to be in. And it's really interesting. The moon landing fraud is this paradox. If they tell the truth about it, then America will look bad. But if they don't tell the truth about it and endure looking bad temporarily, then the whole nation is lost. It's like they say they want to reform the government, but they're afraid to use the most powerful tool to do so, which is to tell the truth about the moon landing fraud and to say, see, they can blame Nixon. They can blame Republicans or Democrats, wherever they want. See how bad it is? See? That's the best tool, is the moon landing fraud, because it's burned in people's hearts. And it will shock them if they realize their government has become that corrupt. Therefore, it's the number one tool to end corruption. And if they don't use that tool, then they're cowards, and they don't love America, and they don't love God. You have to do what God wants more than what people want. God wants the truth to be known. It says multiple times, liars will not enter the kingdom of heaven. And we certainly don't want a nation built on lies.
Well, I hate to say it, but I think that if they did disclose, the moon landing fraud, it would sure make it a lot harder to pull off things like these, pandemic operations and things like that in the future. That all credibility would be, shot at that point, and it'd be much harder to pull off, something like they have.
Well, maybe not. These are advanced chess players who might sacrifice their queen to win the game. If they told the truth about the moon landing fraud and then told a lie about aliens, then we might actually believe the alien lie more. Do you understand? We're proving,
that's a good point. Yeah.
We're proving disclosure by admitting we faked the moon landing. So let us also disclose aliens, which could actually be a lie, but we believe it because they told the truth about the moon landing fraud.
Limited hangout.
Yes, self-inflicted wounds are their, secret weapon. That's what killing Kennedy was. Self-inflicted wound. 9/11, self-inflicted wound. Telling the truth about the moon landing fraud. Self-inflicted wound that they could take advantage of. They could also bring about a new political party, the American Party, the truth-telling party, and control that one by telling the truth about the moon landing fraud. They could, use the advantage of the lie back in 1969, and they could use to their advantage telling the truth, because people are already figuring it out, so they might as well cash in on it while it still has value.
Right, to establish that, our credibility is, we're giving you this to be able to sell you something, further. So that's a really good point. Especially as it relates to an alien sort of occupation or whatever.
Habsburg, I think, if you don't mind, Bart, we got one more question for you. Habsburg, do you want to get into ask him about the Mason question?
Oh yeah, well, I know that you've had some interesting interactions with Buzz Aldrin, and what is your take on his status as a high-ranking Freemason and bringing the Scottish Rite flag onto the the Apollo craft? What do you feel like is the significance of all that? And,
well, first of all, he's not a Freemason. He receives a pretty high salary, and he told me off the record that he believes in God, and that's why he did not swear on the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow, in his mind, he can, fake the moon landing and still be right with God. I disagree, and I tried to convince him otherwise in private conversations. It was a pleading with him to tell the truth. But murders have a reason why they kill. Thieves have a reason why they steal, and liars have a reason why they don't tell the truth, and they justify it to themselves. You know, I don't know much about that world, and I'm not sure I do want to know much about that world. I'm working out my own salvation with fear and trembling, and God warns us about pagan entities. They're throughout the Bible. And if you really, you know, study it, Christmas is pagan, Easter is pagan, and all of those things have infiltrated Christianity. And that's what Satan did. He can't beat him, so he joined him and took over the organization, just like America, just like the founding church by St. Peter. It was good for a while and then became corrupt. America, good for a while and then became corrupt. Red Cross, you know, nonprofit organization, good for a while and became corrupt, right? And that's what we got. We need to start over. You know, the word reform doesn't mean to improve. It means to reform. And the Declaration of Independence says when any government becomes destructive of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it. We need to just start from scratch. We need to reverse power. I mean, I don't know why we still have top-down power. It's never worked for thousands of years. It's only led to tyranny. You had 90% of Americans wanted GMO labeling, and one person vetoed it. That's not a democracy. And so why is it someone in the District of Columbia can tell the governor of California what they can and cannot do? And why is it that the governor of California can tell the mayor of LA what they can and cannot do? And why is it that the mayor of LA can tell the resident association what they can and cannot do? And why is it that the resident association can tell a homeowner that they can't plant a garden in their front yard because it's not aesthetically pleasing? So if copper can, you know, a wire can have electricity go down at left to right, then it can go down right to left. So if we can have power going top down, we could also have power going bottom up, to where the resident association cannot tell the landowner what they can and cannot do, and the mayor cannot tell what the laws within the subdivision are, open carry or guns forbidden. The mayor doesn't live there. And then the governor cannot tell the mayor what to do, and the president cannot tell the governor what to do. That would be freedom. That would be bottom up. Trickle down economics means they give tax breaks to the billionaires so they can hire more butlers. Or instead of giving the banks trillions of dollars for the, you know, collapse they caused, they could have given every American over 18 $20,000, who would then go out and buy cars and washing machines that would trickle up to the people who own those corporations, which are the billionaires. So we need to completely reverse things. We need to simplify laws. We have these 2,000-page laws, and the Speaker of the House said, don't read it, sign it. You can read it after you sign it. She actually said that. You know, and but if you look at the Constitution, these very profound laws are like 1 to 3 sentences. It's very simple. And I've taken notes. Maybe I'll write another book someday about, you know, just rules. If you go to Sibrel.com, I created a board game called 7 by 7 board with 7 pieces each that have to move 7 spaces every turn. My partner and I, we negotiated what the rules would be over 6 months or so. We need to redo that with America. We need to restructure it, take another look at it, because the way that it is now, it turned out horrific. They're faking moon landings and killing their own president and killing astronauts who get in their way. So we don't want that to happen again. So how can we best prevent that? Maybe choose Congress and the Senate by lottery, like the original democracy did. And if you can decide life or death, you know, in a trial, I think you could be qualified to discern whether or not to label a bottle of ketchup with contains GMO. So why not choose Congress and the Senate by lottery? Have those people nominate maybe 5 people for president, then have an election and debates for those people. And then you eliminate 99% of the corruption just by tweaking the rules like that.
That's interesting.
We probably need something like that. There's no payback. There's no lobbying. You have a one-term limit for everything. You can be governor once, sheriff once, mayor once, 5 years. You're chosen Congress and Senate. You don't have to. You can decline it. But minimum qualifications over 25, no felony in the last 7 years, whatever. And then those people, 435 of them, nominate maybe 5 people for president, rather than these 2 political parties deciding, right, which are completely corrupt. And that would help out a lot. And then just reforming the rules of freedom. The government can make suggestions, but they can't mandate anything. I suspect when the country was formed that cocaine was legal. I'm just guessing it probably was. I'm not for cocaine. I'm not even for, alcohol, but it should be your freedom of will to decide. God gives us free will, and so we need to give that to one another in order to end tyranny. So if people want to snort cocaine or drive without a safety belt, that's their prerogative. But, we can suggest, a government can have a health department to suggest not doing those things and a safety department to suggest, but it's ridiculous. Getting pulled over at these tax booths, for having 1 of 3 taillights out or, whatever. It's ridiculous.
And that being a pretext for, like other types of searches and, other kinds of violations.
Yeah, and then I
have a
don't know
tail
if
light
it's
out.
true or not, but allegedly, Supreme Court said anything within 100 miles of the coast of the United States, the constitutional search and seizure laws don't apply. I don't know if that's actually true, but
It's within 100 miles of any border. So within 100
yeah, that's
miles,
where like
and
90% of the population lives. The
and
Constitution doesn't apply.
I've actually experienced this where they like set up mobile checkpoints, like, many, dozens and dozens of miles away from the border, and compel you to stop, and, can like force a search. And like I've experienced that on more than one occasion, and it's really crazy. And they actually do that. So that is true.
Yeah, so obviously the country's lost its way. The ultimate proof of that is the moon landing fraud, and the best way to cure it is the moon landing fraud exposure.
Well, Bart Sibrel, ladies and gentlemen. Bart, it's been a pleasure to meet you. We're very appreciative of your time. Thanks for coming on. We'd love to have another chat sometime if you can make the time. But before we let you go, can you just let everyone know again where they can find you, all your work, anything you'd like to mention? Please go for it.
Yeah, my book about the moon landing fraud or a potential coming alien deception. They're an audio that I read myself, Kindle or print, and they're at Sibrel.com. That's my last name.com. S as in Sam, I, B as in boy, REL, Sibrel.com.
Right on, my friend. Well, you enjoy the rest of your evening, and we will definitely be in touch. And again, thank you so much for your time, and it's been a pleasure.
Sure, just send me a link when you've uploaded it.
Sounds good. Absolutely, I will do that.
All right, take
Thanks,
care.
Bart.
Okay, thanks, Bart. Take care. All right, guys, that was a really fun episode. The time just blew by. He was very nice to give us a little bit of extra time as well. Hasbro, what do you think? Did you enjoy that?
I really did. It just, like you said, it went so fast that there wasn't, so much time to be able to get into, so many things. Like, there's so many, threads around this one topic. So hopefully we could get Bart back for another chat.
Yeah, that would be great, because it was nice that we kind of got to interact with him a bit and scratch the surface a bit. And I wrote down a bunch of different things I wanted to get to, but I'd like to get into like flat Earth a little bit, and the Russian side of the moon missions and stuff, and space junk, and all sorts of different questions. And the people in the chat also had some interesting ones as well. very appreciative, and we just want to shout out again. Thank you so much for the tips, GitHub Enoch. That's very, very nice of you. Thank you so much. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Thanks for coming out. And Angel Dreams for the super sticker. Thank you so much as well.
Well, I saw this GitHub guy ask Moon Train when he commented that a couple of times. What does that mean?
I think maybe he's asking
Like an actual
like
train?
a moon train. I think I think maybe he's just talking about a moon train. Maybe.
Okay. Just curious what that meant.
Get back to us on that if you have anything more on the moon train. Oh wait, here we go. DARPA had a grant. Okay, so they had a grant for a moon train. All right.
Okay.
Interesting.
Well, okay, that's cool. That's a good lead. Thank you, man.
Yeah, we'll have to look into that. For moon train research, it was a few years ago. Okay, moon train. Okay, we'll have to look into that. That DARPA, you know. Okay, guys. Well, thanks to everyone in the chat. Thanks to all the listeners and viewers. Please subscribe to the Divulgence podcast on YouTube, Rumble, and for audio podcasts, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to check out the Scott Horton Academy for a discount for our listeners. You can go to scotthortonacademy.com/divulgence. Let's see. We're just moving around and confirming a few of the shows for the first week or so of May, but we have Courtney Turner coming in on the 4th, and we have Roberta Glass coming in to talk about the Nick Reiner case on the 6th. And then Habsburg and myself will be doing an episode possibly probably before that. We're still picking a date, and then we're looking to see maybe about getting JJ Vance and Landon Humphreys back on the 2nd. So we're just waiting to see about that. But yeah, other than that, Habsburg, anything else, man? Where can the people find you? Any other comment?
No, I mean, just what you said. Those are some good shows, man. It's always great to have Courtney and JJ and Roberta. She's amazing. Like that's a great lineup, and look forward to scheduling out that show that we've been talking about, because I think that'll be a really good one. And yeah, just on Twitter at accountable to me, and at Habsburg Jolly West, and here on the Divulgence podcast. And this was a lot of fun, man. Thanks for setting this one up.
Yeah, it was great. It was really great. So yeah, I hope everyone enjoyed it. Please share it with everyone. We'd love it to do great. Get our viewers up a little bit, and then yeah, maybe we can get them back for a deeper dive. So yeah, thanks again to Bart, and thanks to everyone in the audience and the chat. And yeah, Habsburg, we'll catch you soon, my friend. You take care.
You too, bye.